Okay, now let's talk about one of my favorite forces, and that is the pop axis force. And you will see we'll use the pop axis force quite a lot, or we will at least refer to it to describe other forces. So it's a pretty important force, and you can do really cool things with this. So what does it do? The pop axis force can create, unlike other forces, an angular or rotational movement. So if I just press start, you can see when you look really close that the points are moving around this center line here. And this line can actually be changed by pressing enter. You can rotate it around and then the points will rotate around that. But let's make this a bit stronger. And the first thing is you can do this under speed where already there is a 1 in the speed, and that is the orbit speed. So let's increase that to 3, and you will see now that it's much stronger, of course. The reason I did this is I want you to be careful when you look at the behavior. The points are actually moving in a rotational, angular movement, and we can actually show this by visualizing the velocities. But once they reach the outer ring of this red sphere here, they only move straight forward in a tangential way. So that means that the rotational movement is only applied inside of this sphere. And this is already different to other forces. It has an area of influence. The area of influence can be changed here under shape. You can change the radius and you can change the height. And actually let's set the axis direction back to 0, 1, 0. So something like that. And you can change the size of it, but let's say if you wanted to have this everywhere and not in only in a certain area, you might want to just increase this massively, but this would be kind of stupid because you can actually change this directly, and this is under fall off, because here you have an inner strength and an outer strength, and you can actually set both to 1, and that means of course that it will apply to the points inside of the sphere and outside of the sphere. So if you need that, keep that in mind. You can basically turn this function off. Now the next thing is this rotational movement is pretty cool because maybe you want something like a galaxy simulation or something like that, and then this is perfect. But what if you want to create something else that is rotating? For example, something like a tornado. And this is where the other speeds come in here under speed, because we don't only have an orbit speed, we also have a lift speed and a suction speed. So let's increase the lift speed, and we can actually do this even while it's running. And you can see now there's also something upwards, and if we increase the orbit speed, you can see it already feels a little bit like a tornado, especially when you look from the top and let it rotate a bit faster. But you can see there's a problem. The stronger I make the orbit speed, the further the points will be pushed outwards. And this is something where the third speed comes in, the suction speed. We can kind of limit this effect by creating almost like a magnetic force towards the center, towards the line. And basically what it always boils down to is balancing those 3 speeds against each other. So for tornado, maybe we want something like this. So if we want it to rotate faster, even though this is already pretty fast, then this will usually result in a stronger outwards movement, which we have to counteract with a suction speed, or by increasing the suction speed, and then the whole shape will not be as wide. And of course, the lift speed is then just the upwards movement, which is just a matter of taste. We could, for example, also turn this off, and by increasing the suction speed and balancing it against the orbit speed, you can also, for example, make sure that your points will always stay in a certain area because they are moving outwards, but they're also kind of getting towards the center, and this way they will never leave the area. And this can also be something you might want to have. So a lot of things, as you can see, that you can do with this. Let's make this a bit slower. Yeah, something like this. Again, it's a trial and error usually. There you go. So if you want to have something like that, you don't even need a lift speed, for example. So that's the cool thing about the pop axis force. By combining those 3 forces against each other, you can create multiple different behaviors, and this is why I will use this force quite a lot. Another example would be, by the way, not using an orbit speed, but only a lift and a suction speed. And that means that the points will move upwards, but at the same time will move towards the line And then you can create something like this, for example, like a beam or something. So it doesn't even have to be an orbit speed involved if that's not what you want, right? So let's quickly play around with this again. And what I usually start with when I want to create something like a tornado, and by the way, you can change the suction speed also to something negative, as you can see here. And this will actually push, yeah, that's another example. You can push them away from the center, and this way it's really just an outwards movement if that's what you want. That's also possible with the pop axis force. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to set them all to the same number, which is usually a good starting point for a tornado. And I just wanted to show that to you, how you can set this up. You know, you just dial it so that it gets the right balance. And maybe what we can quickly change is the life expectancy. Oh, I already changed it to 4-1, so that the points will die at some point. So in your case, the points might stay too long, so just adjust the life expectancy. And what we already talked about before we finish this video, let's add to this whole thing a pop force with a little bit of a curl noise, because this will then be a perfect example for a case where this will create a really nice result by combining this with another force. So something like this maybe. And here you can see how interesting this instantly looks like when I add a pop force, because now there's a little bit of chaos involved, and chaos is always a very good idea when you work with simulations. So since we already learned the pop force, let's now use it for this example as well, and we get something that looks really cool. So yeah, this is the pop axis force, a very powerful force that we will use quite a lot. So play around with this and get a feel for it. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks very much and see you later. Cheers.